This class will present the contents of each of the chapters of the course of Basic Geometry. This course aims to present the content of the different disciplines of basic geometry that are taught in the middle and high school. The content begins with the most basic definitions of point, line, and plane. The next chapter presents the relationships between these elements, showing all the postulates. The following chapters present the geometric figures, triangles, quadrilaterals, polygons up to 12 sides, their properties and constructions. The next chapter presents the circumferences and circles, their properties and constructions. A final chapter presents the conic curves, ellipse, hyperbola, parabola, their properties and constructions. Each content element is presented in one or more slides with the detailed explanation of it, as well as the explanation using audio. This first slide shows the contents of Chapter 1 of the Basic Geometry course. This chapter presents the basic elements of basic geometry, which are the following: description of the relations, definitions of point, line, half plane, half plane, definitions of a circumference and circle, definitions of a circle sector and circle, definition and types of angles, definition of a bisector of an angle, definition of a bisector of a line segment, definition of angles, opening values equivalence. This slide shows the contents of Chapter 2 of the Basic Geometry course. This chapter presents the postulates of a basic geometry, which are the following: point, line, and plane, properties and definition of a line, properties and definition of a plane, collinearity, line in a plane, line by 2 points, half planes, types of coplanar lines, postulates of Euclides, types and definition of planes, division of a line segment in subsegments of a line, proportionality between lines segments. This slide shows the contents of Chapter 3 of the Basic Geometry course. This chapter presents the definition, properties, and construction of triangles, definition of a triangle, perimeter of a triangle, types of triangles based in the angles types, similar triangles, sum of the internal angles of triangles, equal triangles, sum of the external angles of triangles, definition of orthocenter, circumcenter, and centroid of triangles, areas of triangles, theorem of equivalence of area of triangles and parallelograms, theorem of Pythagoras. This slide shows the contents of Chapter 4 of the Basic Geometry course. This chapter presents the definition, properties, and construction of quadrilaterals. Definition of quadrilaterals, definition of quadrilaterals concave and convex, perimeter of quadrilaterals, sum of the internal angles, sum of external angles, definition and area of a square, circumferences inscribed and circumscribed, definition and area of a rectangle, definition and area of a parallelogram, definition and area of a parallelogram, rhomboid, or losange, definitions and area of a trapezoid or trapezium isosceles, theorem of equivalence of areas of a triangle and parallelogram, golden segment and golden rectangle. This slide shows the contents of Chapter 5 of the Basic Geometry course. This chapter presented the definition, properties, and construction of circumferences, circles, and their elements. Definitions of circumference and circle. Definition of a radius and diameter. Internal and external points to a circumference or a circle. Perimeter of a circle or length of a circumference. Area of circle. Circle sector or circular sector. Circular segment of one or two chords. Circular crown. Circular crown sector. Relative positions of two circumference secants or tangents. Relative positions of straight lines regarding a circumference or circle. Circumferences inscribed and circumscribed. Definition of angles and arcs. Power of a point. Fibonacci and logarithm spiral. This next slide shows the contents of Chapter 6 of the Basic Geometry course. This chapter presented the definitions, properties, and construction of various types of regular polygons. Polygons concave and convex. Polygons regular and non-regular. Types of regular polygons. Important entities and structures. Formulas of relationships between elements of the side of the triangle. Table of values of sine and cosine for the central angle. Sum of the external and internal angles of a polygon. Regular hexagon, triangle, dodecagon, square, octagon, decagon, pentagon, heptagon, nonagon, ondecagon. This last slide shows the contents of Chapter 7 of the Basic Geometry course. This chapter presented definition, properties, and construction of conic curves, ellipse, hyperbola, and parabola. Definition: ellipse, eccentricity of ellipse, construction of ellipse, tangent to a point of ellipse, inner and outer concentric circles, length latus rectum of ellipse, director circles of ellipse, hyperbola, eccentricity of hyperbola, construction of hyperbola, tangent to point of hyperbola, auxiliary circle of hyperbola, director circle of hyperbola, asymptotes of hyperbola, parabola, construction of the parabola, tangent to the curve of parabola.